In this movie, we're going to take a look at creating and using compositions in After Effects. First, let's talk about what compositions are. Compositions, I like to think of them as like little mini projects. They're basically containers for all of our footage elements that we import and use in our projects. You can't really animate, change, or manipulate anything that is not in a composition. In the After Effects interface, compositions show up as tabs down here at the bottom in the timeline panel. We view the results of our editing up here in the composition panel. As you can see here in the Surfer interview composition, compositions are basically made up of layers, just like a Photoshop document. One of the things you'll do often as a user of After Effects is to create new compositions all the time. So let's practice doing that now. Go to the project panel, and at the bottom of the project panel, you'll see this little icon. It looks like a mini film strip. The tooltip says create a new composition. So go ahead and click it. Now, one of the first things that you want to do is name your composition. In After Effects, unlike Photoshop, there are no layer thumbnails or previews. So get in the habit of naming things well. I'm just going to call this Tester Comp. Now, the first thing you want to be aware of in this dialog box is there's a lot of presets to choose from. If you know your final output medium, there's probably a preset in here that works for you. If not, don't worry about it. I'll show you how to create your own custom composition momentarily. Now let me show you how this preset area is laid out. It's actually organized pretty well, even though it's a pretty intimidating list at first glance. At the top of this list, within these first gray lines here, these are standard web sizes, 320 by 240 for a web video, and for a web banner, 468 by 60 pixels. Remember that everything in After Effects is done in pixels. Inches don't matter. Next in this list, we have presets for NTSC, which is short for National Television Standards Committee, basically the television standard for North America, Japan, and a few other countries as well. We also have standards for PAL, Phase Alternating Line, which is the standard in most of Europe and other countries as well. We next go into some enhanced and higher definition formats. We have a few different types of HDV and also some different types of HD and finally full HD TV. These bottom four presets are for dealing with film. For now, we're going to stick with NTSC DV towards the top of this list. The NTSC DV preset is 720 pixels wide by 480 pixels tall. If you want to create a custom size, you can click on one of these fields here, and when you get this icon, the finger with the horizontal arrow, click and drag to the right or to the left to change the size. If you know exactly what size you're looking for, click once and then manually type in a number and then tab away from that field. Or you could also click away as well. You could also select a pixel aspect ratio. Pixels are the little squares on your screen that make up images and video. On a computer monitor, these little squares are square, exactly as wide as they are tall. On a TV screen, this is usually not the case. Usually it's a little bit more wide or a little bit more tall. For full screen TV, the aspect ratio is 0.91, a little bit taller than it is wide. For widescreen, it's 1.21, in other words, a little bit wider than it is tall. As you can see here, there's a wide variety of pixel aspect ratios to choose from. Likewise, there's a variety of frame rates. NTSC DV operates at 29.97 frames per second. Film operates at 24 frames per second. Some high-definition video goes up to 60 frames per second. And finally, at the bottom of this composition settings dialog box, we need to enter a duration in. The way that the timecode reads is hours, then minutes, then seconds, and finally frames. The number of frames that comprise a second is based off of your frame rate. Right now, our timecode is saying that we have a 5-second long composition if we were to hit OK and create this composition as is. I'm going to change the preset back to NTSC DV, leave the duration at 5 seconds, and click OK. Tester Comp is now a composition that we can drag objects to. For example, we can open up Graphics, open up this subfolder, and drag any one of these objects into our timeline. This Illustrator file is now added to our composition. At the moment, we can't see it because our background is black and the Illustrator file is black. So I'm going to go ahead and with this layer selected, I'm going to hit the delete key to remove it from my composition. There's another way to create compositions which does come in handy quite often. I'm going to open up the Movies folder here in my project panel. I'm going to select the Sunrise Leo HD image. With it selected in the project panel, its dimensions show up here at the top of the project panel. The pixel dimensions are 1280 by 720 with square pixels. That doesn't match the tester comp at all. So I'm going to drag this piece of footage to the new comp icon at the bottom of the project panel. This creates a new composition with the same attributes as the video. So now this composition automatically has the same pixel dimensions, pixel aspect ratio, frame rate, and duration. As we scrub the playhead to see this video, we see that it looks just right in this window. One other thing I wanted to mention briefly is that you could actually have compositions as layers in another composition. This is referred to as nesting a composition, or in other words, pre-composing other layers. Let me show you how this works. I'm going to go back to the surfer interview composition. We have here as a layer in this composition another composition called lower third. That's this bar down here at the bottom of the screen. I can open up this nested composition to see its layers simply by double-clicking it. Now the lower third composition appears as a tab at the bottom in the timeline panel. These 3 layers were initially regular old layers in the surfer interview composition, but I wanted to animate them as a group. Here's what they look like by themselves. I have here this dark solid, and I have some fractal noise that's animating on top of that, but it's a little bit faint, so I duplicated that. And this is the result that I wanted. And I wanted to move all these layers so that they appear on at the same time. But it's 3 separate layers. So what I did is I pre-composed these layers to basically make a nested composition in this composition, so that way I can animate them as one whole. So now all 3 of these layers move as one because they were pre-composed. And that's what you need to know to create and use compositions.